Hi there, writers. This month I want to talk to you about the ethics of writing nonfiction and creative nonfiction. Yesterday I was having lunch with my friend Ainsley. Ainsley wrote an article last month, and in it she talked about one of her friends. She sent the article to her friend to read. The friend sent it back and said, "I love the article, but I'm deeply offended by how you portrayed me." Cut back to our lunch yesterday, Ainsley was so frustrated. She asked, "How do I write what is true? How do I write honestly if it's going to offend and hurt the people around me?" And this is the million-dollar question. We spent hours talking about this and debating this in my graduate program because it's a legitimate question. And it really comes down to the ethics of writing creative nonfiction. How do we stay true to our story, share our story authentically and faithfully, and how do we honor the relationships around us? There are a couple different responses to this. On one end of the spectrum, you have those who say, everything I write about someone else, I let them read and give me feedback. On the other end of the spectrum are those who say, no, people don't have a right to step into my creative process and give me feedback. It's my story. I have a valid story, and I don't invite others into my creative process that way. As a note, in journalism and professional writing, this is sort of the best practice because journalists have to deal with subjectivity and objectivity, and there's a tacit understanding in the interview process that when the interviewee shares their story, they're delivering it into the hands of the interviewer and the writer and letting the writer share that story. And most professional writers will say, I don't want to be beholden to the agenda of this politician or this entrepreneur in my writing. So they're not expected to share what they write after they've written it with that subject. I fall somewhere in the middle, and this largely depends on the relationships in my life, and that's what's going to make the difference for you too. Where you land on this question is going to be determined by your experiences, your preferences, and your relationships. So if I'm writing a feature article, a human interest article, I always share it with the person I'm writing about because my agenda is to make them look good, and I really don't mind if they have feedback into that process. If, however, I'm writing about my own experiences, I try to always come back to this question. Is it my story to share? If it is not my story to share, I either just share only the facts as they are important to my experience, or I just don't share it at all. So, for example, say I have a friend who is getting a divorce. That's their story to share, but maybe I was a character witness in the court for their divorce. I will share the facts. They are getting a divorce. I may even say, but that's their story to share. Meanwhile, I was in the courtroom and this is what I observed and this is what I experienced. On the other hand, maybe there are things that are so deeply tied to my experience that implicate others in a negative way. Then what do I do? So for example, in my first book, I wrote about a season where I worked at a company where I was asked to do unethical things, a film financing company. And because I didn't want a lawsuit on my plate when the book got published, and because it really did make my bosses look bad, I chose to make them anonymous. And I changed their names and I changed the name of the company so it couldn't be traced back to them. But it was still important for me to talk about how being placed in those situations, being forced to make unethical decisions, shaped me as a person. So there may be experiences like that where you need to write, but it makes other people look bad. In that case, give them the gift of anonymity. Change the details to the point that it can't be traced back to them. Now, they may still be upset and frustrated, and there's a line that we have to sort of balance. You have a right to share your story, but as long as you have been respectful and not exploited the other person, their reaction is really up to them, and you can't take responsibility for their reaction to what you're writing. So my charge to you is this: write the truth, write what is necessary, honor the relationships in your life that you want to honor, and then leave the rest up to God and trust the creative process to Him, and He will take care of that for you. All right, I hope that's helpful. Writing mercies to you this month.